It all started with a suggestion from my friend, John, a week of ice fishing on a vast, frozen lake in northern Minnesota. Neither of us was a stranger to the sport, and between the two of us, we had all the high-end gear one could possibly need for camping on a frozen lake for a week. We headed up in high spirits, armed with enough bait to make a Walmart jealous. We reached the lake early Sunday morning and drove out onto the ice, a first for both of us, as we were used to the thinner ice of more southern lakes. The drive to our spot was filled with laughter, high spirits, and the shitty music crackling from a local radio station. The moment I stepped out of the truck, the Arctic air hit me like a fist, stealing the breath from my lungs in a plume of white. The forecast for the week was perfect, sub-zero nights followed by sunny days in the 20s. We set to work immediately, setting up our shanty, a two-man, clam-style sled drilling holes and tying on bait. We were sitting over 30 feet of water, and the fish finder showed little dots hovering just off the bottom. We dropped our lines into the inky blackness, and a feeling of pure joy washed over us as, within seconds, two of those dots shot up and slammed our bait. For the first couple of days, everything was perfect. We caught plenty of fish, the shanty stayed warm, and we were having the time of our lives, taking a much-needed break from the world. It wasn't until the third day that everything went to hell. We had only checked the weather before we left, and, as I said, it had looked perfect. So, when it got cold, really cold, it caught us completely off guard. That would have been manageable if the wind hadn't picked up, whipping the canvas of the shanty so violently it snapped and cracked. The once pleasant warmth inside was wicked away faster than our propane heaters could produce it. Stepping outside meant risking frostbite within minutes. Beneath us, the ice groaned and cracked, a constant thunder under our feet as the rapid temperature dropped and the wind strained it. I was used to the sounds of ice forming, but this was different. As the situation worsened, John grew restless. He kept getting up, repeatedly opening the window blind, pulling his keys from his pocket to check them, changing lures, and even checking the weather on his phone, despite having no service. He was clearly getting antsy and wanted to be anywhere but on that lake. I broke the tense silence. "Hey, want to pack it in and wait for this to blow over?" He started reeling in his line. "Yeah, man. I'm worried we're going to freeze to death out here." "I hear you. Go start the truck. I'll get everything packed up here." John didn't waste a second, scrambling out of the tent and sprinting for the truck. I was disconnecting the fish finder when I heard the engine barely chug to life. Amid the din of the rumbling truck, the cracking ice, and the howling wind, a new sound caught my ear. I froze, listening. It was a faint crinkling, like someone eating a bag of chips just outside the shanty. Then, with a gust of wind that bent the shanty's support poles, there was a sharp snap. My stomach lurched as the tent moved unexpectedly. Ice flew past the opening in the floor where our fishing holes had been. In my shock, it took me a moment to realize what had happened. The metal stake securing the shanty had broken free, and I was now gliding across the smooth surface of a lake at a blistering speed. Panicked, I did the only thing that seemed rational. I dug my boots into the ice, trying to use them as brakes. The metal crampons caught, stopping me dead. The force slammed me to the ground, and I blacked out for a second. I came to, tangled in the base of the tent, still being dragged along. In a daze, I fought against the fabric, tearing at it like a caged animal until it finally let me go, and I slid to a stop. I looked up, my eyes immediately tearing from the cold and wind. Through the blur, I could see the truck's headlights in the distance. I shakily got to my feet and waved my arms, trying to signal my location. John saw me and started driving toward me. He was only about 100 feet away when a boom, like lightning striking right in front of me, shook the ice violently, knocking me to my knees. I watched in horror as the ice beneath the truck buckled, plunging downwards faster than it could fall. A geyser of water and ice shot into the air. The headlights went out as the truck plunged into the water. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward my trapped friend. I could just make out his silhouette pounding on the side window in a desperate attempt to escape. The truck sank quickly, nose diving into the unforgiving depths. By the time I reached the water's edge, it was gone. There was no trace of it or of my friend. I fell asleep there by the water. Honestly, I think I hoped I would freeze to death. Unfortunately, I didn't tea. I woke the next day, numb and hungry. A large pile of snow had drifted against my back, protecting me from the worst of the wind. It was snowing softly now, with no wind, and the place where the water had been was frozen over, as if nothing had happened. I had nothing. My phone was in the sled that had blown away. All I had left were the clothes on my back and my meager survival skills. I knew I had to get off the lake as fast as possible. There was nothing to eat, and eating snow would only make me colder. The landscape was a bleak, seamless sheet of white where the snow and sky merged. There was no sun, no way of knowing which direction to go. I picked one and started walking, my aching body protesting every step. After a while, I stopped seeing the snow. My mind became a uniform white, and only my sense of balance kept me upright and moving. Colorful shapes flitted at the edges of my vision and then disappeared. Oddly, it didn't bother me. Through the snowstorm in my likely concussed mind, a word surfaced, Ganzfeld. I remembered it from a college psychology class, the Ganzfeld effect. When subjected to a uniform field of color and sound, the brain compensates with hallucinations. I saw a deer run through the emptiness. A voice whispered for me to follow. A dog barked. A truck engine rumbled, its hood visible above the snow. All of it, I knew, was fabricated by my mind. That's what I thought when the shape of an ice shanty faded into existence at the edge of my vision. It was a wooden hut, not unlike an outhouse. It was silent as I approached, with no smoke coming from its pipe. When I got close, I shouted, "Hey, is anyone there?" There was a shuffle from inside, and a man emerged, wearing a heavy coat and snow pants. "Ah, hello there," he said. "What are you doing all the way out here after a storm like that?" I considered telling him everything, but settled for my ice shanty blew away. "I'm not sure where I am." "Well, that certainly sounds like a predicament. Why don't you come in and warm up?" I accepted his offer and followed him inside. It was only marginally warmer than the outside, certainly not above freezing, but it was better than nothing. The man threw a hunk of wood into a small stove and lit it with a match. "Want some fish? I caught a good walleye today. I hadn't eaten in over a day and would have eaten rocks to fill my stomach." Fish sounded like a dream. "That sounds delicious. Thank you." He cut fillets from a nice walleye and cooked them on the stove, handing both to me. I ate them ravenously. By the time I finished, the light from the small window had dimmed, and a heavy sleepiness washed over me. The man noticed. "You can stay here tonight if you want. It's too risky to travel alone at night. Tomorrow, I'll get you headed in the right direction." I thanked him and lay down on the floor, falling asleep almost instantly. I woke to the sensation of being dragged through the snow. I opened my eyes to darkness, just bright enough to see the silhouette of the man from the hut dragging me by my feet. My hands were tied behind my back, and a gag was stuffed in my mouth. I wasn't dead yet. I couldn't struggle as long as he held me, so I stayed still, watching him through slitted eyes. He stopped in a cleared area and let go of my feet, walking a few steps away to inspect something I couldn't see. Slowly, I shifted to get a look. It was a massive hole in the ice, roughly 6 feet by 3 feet, with a pile of thick ice blocks beside it. On top of the blocks sat a gas-powered chainsaw. The man picked something up from the snow and set it next to the hole. He fiddled with it, and a flame flared to life, illuminating the darkness. He stood over the burning log, watching it grow. As he did, I noticed something odd, a detail I'd missed before, but now seemed as clear as day. When he breathed, nothing came out. As I watched, my own breath billowed from my nose into the frigid air, but not a single wisp of vapor came from the man. Silently, I began working my wrists, trying to shake the twine bindings loose. They were tied over my gloves, and I slipped them off with little effort. The ankle bindings would be harder. I stealthily moved to bring my feet to my hands when the man's head whipped around to look at me. "Well, look who's finally awake," he said. "I didn't want you to sleep through this next part." I tried to kick away, but he strode over and grabbed me effortlessly, dragging me to the hole. Without ceremony, he pushed me in. The shock of the ice-cold water made my vision swim. I gasped, the gag fortunately stopping most of the water from flooding my lungs. I kicked and struggled to stay afloat as the man, humming to himself, grabbed a block of ice and dropped it back into the hole. He wasn't just going to let me freeze to death. He was going to freeze me under the ice to drown. My mind raced. An idea caught. I stopped moving and let myself sink. Grabbing the rope around my ankles, I undid it and kicked free. The second block was already in place. Using all my dwindling strength, I launched myself out of the water and grabbed the man's leg as he reached for another ice block. I pulled with all my might, and he plunged wordlessly into the water with me. Twisting my body, I dug my crampons into his legs and used him as a springboard to launch myself out of the hole. By some miracle, it worked. I flopped onto the solid ice and forced my body to sprint. Following the trail, ID left when he dragged me. Looking back, I saw the man calmly pull himself out of the hole and sit by the fire. I reached his hut and immediately stripped off my soaked clothes. Rummaging through his things, I found a coat, pants, and gloves. They weren't as warm as my own gear, but they would have to do. I ran, putting as much distance as I could between myself and that hut. When the sun rose, I was once again alone on a pristine plain of snow. I could tell you about the countless hallucinations over the next few days or the way my body grew weaker from hunger, but it was the thirst that nearly killed me. I was cold, but the snow I shoved in my mouth by the handful was far colder. I could only manage to eat a little every few minutes and often had to spit it out before it melted because my mouth was freezing. Combined with the endless walking, this led to severe dehydration. Salvation came in the form of a tripping hazard. One night, walking through near pitch darkness, my boot hit something hard under the snow. I dug it out and found an abandoned handheld ice auger. I couldn't see it clearly, but tracing my fingers along the blades told me it would cut. I was ecstatic. A surge of energy I hadn't felt in days coursed through me. I stood and began drilling. The sound of metal shaving ice filled the dark, still air. My arms burned as I cranked the auger deeper and deeper. I was starting to have to bend over to keep going when the feeling of the ice changed. It felt wrong. Every so often, the auger would get stuck, and I'd have to reverse it and try again. With a final push, the ice gave way, and I fell flat on my face as the auger plunged in a liquid. I yanked it out, put my mouth to the hole, and greedily drank the disgusting lake water. It had a faint, metallic taste, but I didn't care. Once I had drunk my fill, I looked to the horizon and saw the first hint of twilight, providing a clear edge where the ground met the sky. As it grew brighter, I saw nothing but the familiar plain of snow, a blue auger, and the hole it had made. It was the hole that caught my attention, but what was around it? The ice shavings were red, with flecks of black. My heart leaped with fear, but I tried to rationalize it. It had to be something natural, maybe some algae frozen in the ice. I crawled back to the hole and peered in. Feet of ice, and then something else. I began clearing the snow from around the hole. I could see a shape below the surface, but the snow sticking to it obscured the view. Taking off my gloves, I cupped my hands, scooped up some water, and splashed it over the ice. The surface immediately became crystal clear. There, frozen in the ice, was John. A hole was drilled right through his chest, his face contorted in anguish, as if my auger was the very thing that had killed him. I felt sick. The water I had just drunk threatened to come back up, but I forced it down. I collapsed to the ground and curled into a ball, sobbing, a week's worth of suffering finally bubbling over. I stayed that way for a long time, until the sun was high in the sky. The sun. I realized that for the first time, unfiltered sunlight was reaching me. I looked up and saw that the sky had cleared. On the very horizon, I could see a black line of trees. I stood, took one last look at John, and finally made my way back to land. I can't say it was much better once I got there. Hospitals, amputations, the works. I lost all my toes, my right pinky and ring finger, and the tip of my nose. There were other complications, too, that led to a lengthy hospital stay and a massive bill. I've regained my ability to walk and have fallen back into a normal life, aside from the weekly therapy sessions. It's been a year since then. I'm only writing this now because I got a knock on my door today. It was John, wearing a coat and snow pants. In the center of his chest, the coat seemed to cave in. He smiled warmly at me. "Hey man, long time no see," he said. "Want to go ice fishing?" Despite the cold, no vapor left his mouth.